Good morning, everybody. I hope that you are having a wonderful Thursday. Welcome to the last recap I'm going to be doing about the state budget that we passed last week. Just as a heads up, my office will be closed tomorrow in observance for 4th of July weekend. So, if you're trying to get a hold of us and you're not hearing back from us on Friday, that's why. But today in this budget recap, I want to focus on the last broad area of policy that I really wanted to highlight about the state budget, and that's public health. And I'm going to be talking about public health really broadly. I'm going to talk specifically about community violence prevention. I'm going to talk about the impact of infrastructure on public health. And then I'm going to talk about long-term care as well, and then briefly touch on a couple other topics, because the state budget had implications for all of those different areas. So to start, I want to talk about community violence prevention. And we've seen in District 36 a real recent rise in gun violence, and that's scary. And I believe that it's really important to work to address the root causes of violence in our communities. We have some wonderful organizations here that are trying to do that, especially the South Pittsburgh Coalition for Peace. And they've got some really wonderful gun violence interrupters who do some absolutely incredible on-the-ground work right here in South Pittsburgh. And I've been glad to be able to support the work that they're doing already. But what's really exciting is that the state budget provides about $30 million for violence intervention and prevention programs that are aimed at reducing violence in our communities. And I'm really excited about that. And I'm going to be continuing to work with our community partners here to try to bring some of that money back to the district to begin continuing to really address the gun violence that we're seeing. I'm excited for the opportunity to continue to bring trauma-informed services, behavioral health care, intervention strategies, all kinds of communication building and mentoring to people in District 36, especially I think this is important for our young people and our students. So I think that is, something that was a real win in this budget, and a budget that, as I've highlighted in other parts of this video series, did not have a whole lot of wins in it. I want to talk about infrastructure here, because this is an area where we did not see, a lot of wins. And so my colleagues and I had this proposal that had $200 million in it to remediate lead and asbestos in our public schools. And I think that that's really important, but that didn't end up being included in the final budget, which was, again, yet another reason why I voted against it. But what's going to happen is that our school districts are going to have to take on these public health related costs, and that is expensive and a real problem.
Oh, right out there? Yeah. Okay.
Ravi's here in the office today, and he's been watching the door, and a dog apparently had a moment where he saw Ravi and reacted, so there was a little bit of a kerfuffle there. But anyway, to hop back and just say, I think we shouldn't be passing those costs on to property owners. I think, one of the things that we could have done with this budget, which left billions of dollars unspent, would have been to reduce property taxes. That was a real possibility, and we didn't see that happen. But I also want to talk about infrastructure in terms of internet access. Now, we saw during the pandemic that between work and school, and then specifically, with regard to public health, telehealth appointments, that access to the internet was really, really critical. And my colleagues and I had been pushing for real investments in broadband internet infrastructure. And we just didn't see that in this budget, which means that, some of my colleagues decided that it was okay that those without internet not have access to the same educational opportunities or doctor's visits. And I think that lack of access to the internet is a real issue of public health that we could have solved in this budget, but didn't. The last thing I'll kind of say here in terms of infrastructure is to talk about workers, particularly when we're thinking about care work. We're seeing a growing population of older adults in Pennsylvania, and we're seeing more folks with disabilities as well. And so we have a critical shortage of direct care workers in this state. And my colleagues and I had a plan to invest $500 million in training workers in these fields and in paying them a living wage. Now, instead, that means that workers that take care of our grandparents at St. Norbert's or who provide services to homebound residents in Southside are going to continue to carry heavy caseloads. They're going to make a sub-living wage, all while being entrusted to care with our loved ones. And I think it's really important that we make sure workers get fair pay in order to provide the best quality of care to the people that we love and care about. And I view that as an issue of public health and also one of infrastructure. But I think that also leads nicely into the last thing that I'll talk about broadly in terms of public health, which is long-term care. And we did see some wins here. We saw about $282 million from the American Rescue Plan go to funding long-term living. So that was about $247 million for nursing homes to protect their residents and staff by providing PPE, testing, and infection control, and about $30 million for assisted living residents and personal care homes for those same sorts of things. And I think that is kind of a big win. But there are other issues of public health that we face here in District 36, things like substance use, homelessness, trash buildup, flooding, and more that really did not see enough or any substantial investment in this year's budget. And so, once again, I did end up voting against this budget because I believe it just did not go far enough to address the needs of people who are really struggling to make ends meet right here in our communities. It just left too much money in a so-called rainy day fund. And I think what we've seen over the past few days is, not only are people figuratively going through a thunderstorm, but we are quite literally going through rainy day after rainy day that is having such a toll on our infrastructure. And to hear some of my colleagues say that it was okay to leave billions of dollars in a rainy day fund when we seem to be experiencing one, it was unacceptable. I wanted to make sure that folks who were struggling got what they needed to get back on their feet as we begin to recover from this pandemic. So like I said, this is the last video in the budget recap series. So I'll look forward to seeing you all later with more non-budget related recaps in the future. All right, take care, everybody.